Just show you, front pages are full of this. The papers are realising something big's afoot here. The Prime Minister's got his big idea, the next year or so running down to the election. So the Sun's saying, now get a move on. They're saying, OK, you're going to do this, do it. Do it for drivers. The Guardian, ministers seek curbs on 20-mile-an-hour limits, and the Guardian would traditionally be in favour of a lot of the stuff that's been rolled out. The Mirror has the story about him using a helicopter while he called for people to help drivers. He wasn't in a car yesterday. And then the defining one, I think, is over here. Have a look. So the Sunday Telegraph, obviously, that's very much the Sunday Telegraph's agenda to stop these, what they see as anti-motorist measures. And he's given them an interview right up their street. I am on the motorist side, says PM. And he's going to review the so-called anti-car schemes. Not everyone would agree that they are like that. But let's just have a look at what some people call the anti-car scheme. So come over here with me, and we're going to bring a few of them together in this graphic and just take a look at the things that basically make drivers go potty, all right? So in this road here, some drivers, not all behave like this and go lose it at the wheel when they see this stuff in the road, but some do, no doubt. What don't they like? We can have a look here. So the planters, the petrol pumps being phased out, the 20 mile an hour, the ULEZ we were talking about. Let's take them one at a time here. So first of all, yes, this petrol and diesel 2030 date. No new cars with petrol and diesel. That's one of the policies. Then you've got 20 mile an hour everywhere, all over residential areas. They don't like that, these drivers. Then you've got, let's see, another policy. We mentioned ULEZ, didn't we? We mentioned the ultra-low emission zone, which is London, but may well be rolled out further. And then cycle lanes as well. Drivers particularly upset where you get cycle lanes wanded off, segregated, because it says they say it reduces the space they have on the roads. Cyclists say, well, it makes us safer. So, critics saying he's jumping on a bandwagon. You don't think so, though, Chris? You think this stuff needs doing?
I think if we believe him, and I take on board his hypocrisy, it's ridiculous. He's taking helicopters while saying that we need to be more environmentally friendly sometimes. But I absolutely agree. These low-traffic neighbourhoods, they're so repellent in the way in which they were brought in. COVID happened, and these councils rubbed their hands with glee and said, brilliant, we'll bring these things in, we'll use these emergency traffic experimental orders to bring them in. Then they did the consultations after they brought them in. So many of the residents were against them, where they closed off these roads, moving all of the traffic onto main roads on which many, many people live. And then once the consultations on many of these cases said that the residents were against them, the councils said, well, sorry, we're still bringing them in. Councils are making millions from this. And what it's doing, the way in which they are theoretically meant to work is that they are moving traffic to the main roads.
Which is where it should be.
Yes, but the problem with that, though, is that the boundary roads, of which I live off one, that used to have rush hour traffic, used to be congested at rush hour, they're now congested all day, every day. We have people, residents and cyclists and pedestrians who use those roads who are sacrificed for the enclaves that have these low-traffic neighbourhoods. People are hammered with fines because of the differences then on their driving habits.
Everything you described sounds really good to me. What do you think about it?
I'm sort of the same. Like, I understand the way they were brought in, it wasn't cool. But these don't feel like anti-car policies. They feel like pro-people policies. And again, I just feel like this is such a diversionary tactic, because this is not... Are you really saying, are you going to put your tick in a box for Conservatives because of a low traffic zone, considering everything else they've done? They're trying to make you focus on one thing.
I'm afraid to say that those people...
You wouldn't do that, would you, Christo? You wouldn't.
This is the first time I've heard something from them that I've actually thought,
yes,
you are talking
fine.
my language.
Great, but I just think everyone needs to remain focused on everything else that's been screwed up. Don't put your tick in the box for them because they're going to potentially scrap a low traffic zone, which aims to help people.
But it doesn't help. It's not fair.
I don't know.
It doesn't help.
Yeah. I've sort of stayed out this LTN thing.
I've got to say this. We have people that live on the roads that take the
main roads.
Traffic. But we still have
main roads are supposed to take the traffic. That's what they're for.
More traffic so that people who live in expensive areas have these closed-off traffic-free streets. Now, if they had gone through a proper plan planning process, perhaps there would be an argument for them.
But on a Friday, sometimes I have a car. I take a car back from work, and sometimes, I sit there, and sometimes I fall asleep in the back of the car because it's been a long week. And every time I wake up, it's a particular thing. The guy who drives doesn't go down the main road back to my home. He's using his Google Maps, and it's going to take him down in these rat runs and these cut-throughs.
Rat
down
runs
through,
is such a horrible
or whatever
expression.
they are. Take him through smaller residential streets. And every time he goes down this road with speed bumps, and I then wake up and I think, oh, man, why have you done this? Why don't you stay on the main roads? These aren't for you. You're not supposed to be driving a cab down these residential streets. That's not what they're for.
So they're not for people who are working. They're not for people who need to get from A to B. They're not for mums and dads who need to pick up their children from school.
Definitely not as a cut-through.
People who need to just live their life. The hard-working people that you just referred to.
What about the fact that he wants to review a council's ability to enforce 20-mile-per-hour zones in residential zones?
Well, again, if it's a heavily residential area or outside of school, I actually see the logic for 20-mile-an-hour zones.
Everywhere. Why not everywhere?
Because on main roads, when there is zero traffic, I'm sorry, when late at night,
for instance, they're not doing it there.
They are.
Well, they are.
On roads with no traffic.
Big wide roads with no. Yeah, I mean they're 20 miles. I mean, if in big cities they're 20 miles an hour everywhere. So let's just take the call. Jerry in Durham. Hi.
Hi, Jeremy. How are you this morning?
Very well. I love Durham, as you know. Jerry in Durham, and we've got another caller in the northeast, Shelley in Newcastle. You go first, Jerry. What do you think?
Yeah, I think there's Rishi Sunak is jumping on what he believes is a vote winner, a bandwagon. Couple that with the fact that he's flying up to Scotland today to issue 100 new licences for his friends in the oil companies.
Yes, I'd heard about the oil story as well. So, but you think he's going to drop the green stuff? Is that right?
Well, he sees it as a potential vote winner. He's read the runes from the people of Uxbridge, who were angry with Sadiq Khan and the anti-Labour vote that arose out of that. And I don't think the runes are right. I think that most sensible people in this country want speed limits on roads. They want to protect children. They are people issues, as your panellist has said. This is not about this is about people.
OK, Shelley in Newcastle, do you agree with that?
No, because everything they seem to put a price on, which I think is wrong, first stop, and it's always the little people, not businesses or anything. And they take it out of one area, but then the cars are having to go around another area, and it's causing congestion and backups, and they're having to sit there pumping the car fumes out. I can't see how it actually works.
Have you got one of these zones in Newcastle then?
There's one up in Newcastle.
Yeah, clean air zone.
Luckily, my son can go a different way to get to work. But I just think it's hammering the normal people. I mean, big businesses are still putting the products in plastic containers, and it's always the little people keep adding money on that, add it onto electricity and stuff like this for the environment. And unless we're a little country on the dot of the map, if you look at keep saying little England, and unless the big countries, India, China, Russia, help, we're the ones that seem to be pushing it.
Jerry, what do you think of that?
Well, I think that's absolute nonsense. I think we have to think about our people. We have to think about our children who are growing up in these poor environments. When you look at what the doctors are saying about the health of children and the development of the lungs as a result of it, the Newcastle scheme, by the way, applies to commercial vehicles, not to private cars. OK. It's the bridges as well, isn't it? I'd read.
I'm sorry, like a lot of these schemes, so just what we were talking about before the break, that you're told that these ultra-low emission zones are going to help children's lungs, and it's so emotive. These low-traffic neighbourhoods are going to help children's lungs. Well, again, children live on the boundary roads where traffic has gone up,
safety for children.
firstly. And secondly, well, again, it's not much safer if there's more traffic on those roads. But secondly, Sadiq Khan here in London, and this is not a London story because they'll be rolled out across the UK, the initial ultra-low emission zone in central London absolutely transformed the air in central London. But when it was extended to the first boundary, not the latest one that he's doing, his own impact assessment said that there was little to no impact on the air quality because the central London one was the one that had affected the air quality.
Yeah, but then it widened it further.
And now he's widening it further because it's a cash grab from the very people who can't afford it.
OK, hang on just a second as well. Just to be really clear as well, I know we've had this discussion, but this was a Boris Johnson, ULEZ was a Boris Johnson policy.
Implemented by Sadiq Khan.
Enforced by Grant Shapps.
You're inaccurate.
OK, let's not get into too much London here. We're talking about the big issues, the cycle lanes, the 20-mile-an-hour limits, the ultra-low emission zone in London going more widely, etc., all of that, and the end of petrol and diesel. Whether actually it's time for Rishi Sunak to campaign against his own party's policies. After the break, we'll be taking on your calls, more calls on this. Should he...